Hey everybody, here we are at the Starboard booth, AWSI 2024 with
Ollie O'Reilly, Starboard, SUP and Foilboard Brand Manager. So yeah, great. Here we've got the whole range. I think we've actually got probably more boards and gear than any other brand this year at the AWSI. So yeah, I'm going to introduce now the kind of foilboard range overall, from kind of the entry level up to the kind of the performance in downwind and the inflatable side as well. So Starboard being kind of a premium brand, we always want to focus on having a product for every kind of user group. So that means from the entry level to kind of the most world champion winning podium finishes as well. So performance is in our DNA as a brand, but also appealing to kind of entry level mass market, getting people into the sport, having gear that's accessible, that people can get on and actually enjoy and spend the time instead of getting frustrated is kind of a super important aspect. So with that focus, if I start to over here on the left, here we've got the Wingboard range. And for the Wingboard range, this has always been about kind of appealing to that accessibility. So having boards that if you're getting into the sport or you're kind of getting to grips with it, having gear that is easy to learn on, but also gives you progression. So with the Wingboard range, these boards are kind of fairly compact in outline, so fairly full in the nose, meaning they're kind of wide in the nose, wide in the tail, which means that you have a kind of big area for stability. So these boards really focus on making it easy to stand on. So when you are kind of getting to grips with the wing, you can focus on that rather than kind of losing all your stability and balance from trying to balance. So what is unique about the Wingboard range, and it's very different from other boards in the market, is that we really focus on having the volume in an area where it's helpful. So if I put it kind of up here, we put the volume out on the rails. So you can see that there's a lot of thickness on the rail, and that means that we can thin the kind of midsection of the board. So where you actually stand is much thinner, which means that you have a direct connection to the foil.
Oh, that's how you guys do it.
So what we're trying to achieve is to really have that kind of control and sensitivity when you're standing, so you feel really connected and it doesn't feel like you've got kind of high heels between you and the foil. And what that means is the closer you are, everything is more reactive. So when you're up in the air, when you're pumping, you just feel more in control. And so the Wingboard is all about making you feel connected to the foil, and especially if you're at kind of entry level and as you progress, that's super important to have that ability. So that's why we have the volume kind of out on the rails and the kind of wide nose and wide tail.
That's how you guys do it. Okay.
Multiple foot strap inserts on all the boards, so you can really customize your preference. Again, if you're riding a different foil, that might influence where you want your position. And if you're kind of advanced rider or entry level, that's also going to depend on that. So all of our boards have kind of fairly large track boxes so that you can really adjust the position of the foil depending on kind of the wind, the conditions, and also that skill level. So the Wingboard is available. Here we have the white and black, which is the limited series, which is a fantastic value price point, entry level construction. It's super strong, durable, but also affordable. We also have the blue carbon, which is the more kind of progressive, lighter construction, which is going to be kind of easier to get up. And again, if you're at higher speeds, it's going to be much more performance driven. So the Wingboard, to summarize, to kind of recap, is that entry level, having a board that's kind of easy to stand on for the first time wingers, but also giving progression as you go in kind of the smaller sizes. You have that kind of performance as well. So from small to big range that focus on getting people into the sport.
Can we talk a little bit about the cutaway kind of
so the cutaways
at the bottom here? Because when I was teaching clients on Vancouver Island a couple of years ago, the hardest thing for them was to kneel and then to stand, because it's always that side to side.
Exactly, yeah.
So that covers it with the width.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned the progression into...
Yeah, so in terms of kind of breaking down in more detail the shape,
sure,
the Wingboard kind of brings together a lot of the innovations from windsurfing. So Starboard being an Olympic supplier of the IQ foil. We've learned a lot of years from trying to create the most efficient release that's going to come up and get off the water as quickly as possible. And what it means is by having these cutaways or these steps in the board, you focus on having a center rocker, which is flat, which gives you the glide. So as you're getting kind of planing, you're utilizing the full length of the board, but then you're limiting the drag from the sides. So these kind of act as stabilizers, which gives you the balance. But as you're kind of getting up to speed, that is kind of, you're reducing the friction from these steps, which means when you're kind of taking off, you're actually able to rock the board up into foil. And as you're coming down also, you're kind of reducing the overall wetted area. So you're less kind of friction when you're touching down, and then quicker releasing when you're getting up onto the foil.
Awesome.
And also throughout kind of most of the boards in the range now, you're going to see more V in the nose. And what that does is it means it, again, as you're starting to get some speed, you're kind of gliding on the center line of the board, and the rails are kind of lifting, which means it's quicker to release. But the main kind of focus is when you're coming down, it's more forgiving. So as you're kind of pitching down and touching down, there's less area which kind of sticks to the water, which means that you can pop back up onto the foil much quicker and easier. So it's more forgiving on touchdowns.
Okay.
Okay, so then from the wingboard, we then move to the takeoff range. So the takeoff range, it's kind of split into two. The smaller sizes are really great for freestyle, winging, prone, and also in the waves. So this is what kind of the podium boards, team riders like Benoit Carpentier, Oran, Zane, they're using these boards in competitions, and they're winning events on these smaller boards around kind of 40 to 55 litre volume. So from the smaller boards, as you go bigger in kind of length and width, you then have more of a crossover also between kind of sup foiling and winging as well. So you have between the takeoff, the smaller sizes for the freestyle wave, prone, and as you go kind of longer in length, you can actually sup foil them and obviously wing them as well. So the takeoff range this year, what is new is really focusing on actually going slightly longer in length, but more narrow. And that's a general trend as we go through the range. You're going to see that actually going longer and slightly narrower means that it's a little bit like riding a bike. Once you get more speed, you're more stable. If you're kind of not getting much speed, it's a bit more kind of challenging. So by having longer lengths and a little bit more narrow, you're increasing the efficiency and glide of the boards, which means then you're kind of able to get going, and that means that initial speed and glide means it's more stable to ride and get up early. So that's where we see, as we go to the mid-length boards and obviously downwind boards later, that's the kind of concept, going more longer and narrower to get you that initial speed so that you can go in lighter winds and also get that speed for kind of high wind as well. So the takeoff range is a little bit more the takeoff range is that kind of crossover, more wave orientated. It's more pulled in nose than say the wingboard. So by having a more kind of surf nose, there's less swing weight when you're doing your turns. So if you're in the waves, it's going to be easier to turn and rotate, and also kind of faster speeds in the air. On the smaller boards, we still feature a little bit of a cutaway. It's not as drastic, but you're kind of, again, focusing on having width, but reducing the drag. So having that kind of cutaway here means when you're touching, kind of taking off, you're actually riding more of a kind of narrower board, but then you still have the stabilizer and kind of width when you're in the waves, where you're kind of standing back on these small boards, you want a flat deck here, and you want to be able to put your foot almost to the side as you're doing those kind of snappy turns, and that allows still having that width. So you're basically getting a narrower board on the bottom, like kind of the more downwind focus, but on the deck you're still getting the kind of width and control to do those turns. Okay, so the takeoff also available is in the blue carbon, which is the blue one here, and then the limited series for the kind of more affordable value price point. And then the newest probably to the range, which is kind of following this mid-length style design, is the above board. And the above is really focusing, as I said before, on light wind, easy and early takeoff. So having a board that is kind of more longer and more narrow, meaning you're getting more efficient glide, means that, again, like riding a bike, you can get that initial glide and get moving and then take off that much earlier. And that gives, like, what a few of the guys that have been kind of testing and coming back, that's one of the feedback. They're amazed by, if they have a 70-litre takeoff, which is kind of shorter and wider, and a 70-litre above, they're amazed that actually it feels like it's kind of, even though it's much more narrow, it's kind of actually similar stability because you're getting that initial glide. And that's something that we see really kind of the direction of it is it always goes in cycles. And before when we first introduced the Wingboard, we had kind of 5'8" by 25, which was one of the classic size. At the time, we loved that board, but the kind of industry then went short and wide. And so we also did the same. And then it's kind of going back now to the more longer, more narrow boards for that kind of glide and efficiency.
Okay.
So the above is really a kind of hybrid shape, which brings together what we have learned from our downwind foiling boards, that's the ACE foil, and then merging some of the elements we like from the Takeoff as well. So if I compare it to the ACE foil, they're not as long and they're wider in the nose, which means they're more parallel overall. So they're more straighter and a wider tail, wider nose, which means they have good stability. But because they're shorter, they're more agile and maneuverable in the air compared to an ACE foil, which is longer. So you're not able to do as kind of more maneuverable turns as you would on something that's shorter like this. So the above is really targeted as that light wind kind of maneuverable wingboard, while the ACE foil are more towards dedicated downwind, but still kind of are great for light wind as well. So the shape, one of the unique things about this shape, and it follows across most of the boards in our range, which is quite unique to Starboard design, is we're always, again, volume placement makes a massive difference on kind of, if you have two boards, one 70-litre, both 70 litres, the way you position that volume transforms the ride. And that's something that has, again, people have gone out on the water, they've been testing, and one of the feedbacks was, wow, these boards are amazing to pump. And what we've done is we've actually put kind of the volume, again, trying to get as thin as you can where you stand to get that connection and response to the foil, and then putting the volume, kind of the thickness in the nose and in the tail. So it's kind of got this pendulum effect. So it's like a lever almost, like as you swing it down, it wants to kind of get momentum, and then as you kick it up again, it wants to kind of go up. So when you're pumping it, it's really nice to kind of get that almost pendulum effect, and it's really easy to kind of get speed by doing that. So the other thing as well is when you have the volume here, it means that when you do kind of push it to pump it, it doesn't sink. A lot of the boards from kind of like I see in the industry, they're really thin in the nose and kind of flat. And as soon as that nose goes under, it's like a spoon. It then captures the water, and it's hard to then bring it back up. We have quite a V in the nose and the thickness, which means that even when you're coming down, touching down, if the nose goes under, it wants to float back up. It doesn't kind of capture the water and kind of drag, and is slow. And also when you're kind of pumping it to get up onto the foil, you have that kind of, even if you really push it down, it pops back up. And that really helps you get up onto,
that makes sense.
Up into foil. And it's the same in the tail. Like when you stand on these boards, you don't want to be kind of sinking in the nose or kind of sinking in the tail. You want it to be kind of fairly level. And we achieve that by kind of placing the volume so that when you are sat on the board or stood on the board, it's kind of nice and level in the water. So the above
that makes sense.
Comes from various sizes. This is the 5'9" by 18. So again, 18 wide, quite narrow. This is our 59 litre, and it goes up to kind of 123. So these boards again are kind of narrow and long for light wind winging. So this is our kind of latest product, which is getting a lot of attention from people that are trying it. This is a standout new product to the range. And then as we move from kind of that, with these dedicated wingboards, we're moving now towards what I think is a big kind of in-demand product at the show, which are the downwind foil boards, and a lot of people that have got into winging are now looking at how do I get into downwind SUP, and it's you kind of come from two avenues. You either come from a SUP background, which means then you need to learn to foil, or you come from a wing background where you can already foil and you need to learn to paddle. So you're kind of merging these two markets. And these boards, as you can see in the shape, they're almost like these kind of torpedo-looking bullets, all about speed. And here we have two designs. One, the Ace foil, which is this one here, which are from 6'9" up to 7'10". And these boards are a little bit wider, as you can see, which gives a bit more initial stability. Fantastic for paddling up onto foil. Great still being a bit shorter than the ones I have to my left, which means when you're in the air, they feel quite agile still, even being quite long. And this was the first design we came out with, and still one of my favorite, because unlike the Lightning, which are longer here, again, when you're in the air, these feel shorter. So when you're in SUP waves or in your foiling or even winging, they feel very agile, and you have that additional width to kind of give you that stability. The latest addition, though, are the Lightning boards. So this is the Ace Foil Lightning, and we are the only brand here to, I think, have the most narrow board, which is a 15 wide Ace Foil board. And even like Zane, who's a kind of world champion rider, Benoit, when we first kind of said, oh, we got this 15 wide board for you to try, they were a little bit like, okay, that sounds too unstable. But they all, as soon as they got on it, they're like, okay, I need one of these. Even myself, I'm 80 kilos. Trevor, who helped design these as well, he's 85, and we can stand on this. And this comes from a lot of the kind of learnings and innovations from our raceboard development. So in SUP raceboards, it's all about speed. So every year you're trying to create a faster board, and by doing that, we have to go more narrow, but at the same time, you have to still make them able to stand on. People have to be able to stand on these boards and ride them, but yet you're still trying to make them fast. And so with that, we've learned over the years that having kind of boxy rail, we call it, which is quite a thick, almost kind of square rail, means that you're maximizing the width on the deck and maximizing on the bottom, but then it means you can make the boards more narrow. What we see from kind of other brands and what we've actually tested, when we designed these boards, we came up with 5 different prototypes. One with big beveled rails, like what a lot of brands use, where you kind of have a narrow bottom, but the rails angle out on the deck. And we tried bigger takeoffs, we tried X15 from the racing, all in the same kind of length and width. But this Ace design is by far the most efficient. And this comes, the Ace is actually a downwind SUP board. We had it back in 2011, and it was always the fastest downwind board. And that's because you've got this really super narrow outline in the tail. And as you kind of push, as you paddle, that tail naturally kind of digs in the water and sinks. And what that does then lifts the nose. So when you're trying to get up onto foil, as you're doing those strong strokes, the tail sinks and it's doing this kind of oaring or yawing effect, which then helps you get up onto the foil, because all you want to do is break the tension in the nose to then kind of get yourself up. And so the outline of the board really makes a massive difference in kind of the efficiency. So again, you've got really parallel through the middle, which means it's very predictable and kind of tracks well. But then behind the box, that narrow outline really helps you get up onto foil, and it's the most efficient design we've done. And so going back to the rails here, when we have bevels, it's creating an angle for the board to roll, and that makes it more unstable. And so we, instead of doing kind of a wider deck and a narrowed bottom, by having the volume where you need it, means you can go more narrow. And so a 15 wide board feels actually as wide as, say, a 2-inch kind of 17 wide board. And that's the general feedback from everyone that tries these boards, that have tried different brands. They're amazed by the stability for such a kind of narrow width. So the Ace foil really is a standout. This is the 15 wide. This is what Fiona, Zane, Benoit all using on the competitions. We then have 17, 18, and 19. and that's the lightning range of ACE foil boards. So the next standout product, which I think has just gone out on the water, is our Zero hollow board. And the concept of that is the lighter the board, the more kind of easier it is to get up onto foil. Something that's heavy is always going to kind of bring you kind of more energy you have to spend, and it's less efficient. So when you're foiling, and especially sup downwind, the lighter the board, the easier it is to get up flying earlier and to stay flying for much longer. So we've created this Zero hollow board, and the weight is 4.5, which is definitely the lightest production board. Our target is about 4.2, and again, that comes from a lot of years of building hollow SUP race boards and bringing that technology into the foil boards. And that, maybe it comes back in a minute, but it's in high demand. That's why it's going out all the time. That is a key product that is definitely, everyone comes and checks it out, basically. Everyone's kind of amazed by having that lightweight in a hollow board. So that's kind of a hero product of the show. Before we move to the inflatable, the other one, which is a new product for us, is our pump foil board. So this is a 3-1, so short, but the weight of this board is 1.5 kilos, so it's super lightweight. You've got a 10-inch box here to accommodate a little bit of movement. But these boards, we tested quite a few different sizes, and what we wanted is a board that is lightweight and really is stiff and strong. So when you're pumping this board, you have that rigidity to really excel and kind of, again, stay up riding for longer. So some of the features we have, because these boards are so small, you don't have time to look at where your feet are positioned. When you get on these boards, if you're doing a dock start, you can't look down to see if you've got it in the right position. So you have to go off feel. And so knowing different textures and feeling, okay, my back foot is on the diamond groove, that helps a lot. And then on the middle here, you know, kind of, you've got the center line, so you already can feel where the center of the board is. And having the corduroy texture here means you have super grip as well. So those small details make it easier and more intuitive when you are going to do a dock start. You also have a kicker, so you can really put your foot all the way to the back. And these we're going to retail at €699, so it's a good price point as well. So super lightweight, great value, and a really good shape. Okay, so moving away from composites, where we have the ability to do lots of changes in shape, and in our workshop in Bangkok, we can try lots of different things. When we move to the inflatables, we have more constraints. So the way that these boards are produced, they use large machinery which needs to run for kind of thousands of meters. So the drop stitch is in some ways a limited variable. We can't do too many things with it, which means that you have to be more creative in terms of kind of making these performance upgrades to the inflatable boards. So it's not as easy as it is with the hard boards, where we can just shape foam and make what we want. The inflatables, we have to be a bit more creative. So starting with on kind of the entry level, if you want a board particularly for schools and centers, but anyone that wants a board to get into kind of winging and just actually to learn how to wing, because I think often we see winging as foiling, but actually just being able to learn and get the grips of how the wind works and using something that's stable to learn on is really key. So we have the Wingboard Learner. This board is actually really versatile. You can windsurf it, you can wing it, and you can use it as a SUP, so a stand-up paddleboard. So the Wingboard Learner is, again, wide in the nose, wide in the tail, so it's really stable. You have the mast base here, so you can attach a windsurf rig. You have a handle, nose and tail, so if you've got kids or schools that want to kind of pick it up, make it easy to carry. And on the bottom, you have the option here where you have kind of the center twin fins here, so the two side fins, and they have the large Drake 220, which gives you that ability to be able to go upwind. So if you're winging or windsurfing, these additional kind of center fins means that you can actually go upwind and kind of keep a course. And then if you want to go just kind of SUP or stand-up paddleboarding, you can remove these where the actual whole kind of box comes off. You can, instead of taking the fin out, you can actually remove the whole base, which means it's more efficient when you're paddling it. So the 4 screws here can just lift up, and then you can put a normal center fin at the back here, is really far back to give you that tracking. So when you really want to kind of go paddleboarding, you have the ease there. So within this board, it's an ideal offering which gives you a lot of options, whether it's windsurfing, winging, and stand-up. It's built in our Deluxe Light construction, which is a woven technology, which really increases the overall stiffness. But the main point is it's super lightweight. So the Deluxe Light is really a really lightweight board, which not only makes it easier to carry, but also if you're again winging, you have kind of lighter board, which means you're going to go faster and go in lighter winds. So this board is available also in a foil version, so you can have it where you can foil it as well, but this one is just with non-foiling. And a lot of places actually are shallow waters where you can't actually have a foil. So these are great if you're in lagoons or you don't have deep water to foil. This is a great option for winging. So the Wingboard Learner is that entry level. Then we have...
Because you guys started with the... what was it? Were you the ones that had the one center fin before that could attach?
Yeah, we've had center fins in the past, but...
So now we're going with a tri?
Yeah, we have now the two forward fins that we did a lot of testing back and forth, and we found that that's kind of the best.
To stay upwind a little bit better?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
And also it has kind of the edge release, which gives you that kind of sharp rail edge, which means you have a smoother release. So like on a hardboard where you get to tail, you have a sharper rail. Here we create that using the rail edge, which gives that nice, smooth, efficient release.
Very interesting.
And then going to now kind of foiling inflatables. So here I have what's called our airfoil, and this is offered in a number of different sizes. And this is a patented technology, and that key design here is that it's got actually a composite plate which is underneath the pad here, and that then means that you can connect the foil directly to the top plate. So like we were saying earlier with the wingboard and the composite designs, how we want to have kind of that connection to the foil, here you're connecting to kind of a centimeter thickness carbon plate on this board, which means that you have a lot more control and you don't have any air between you and the foil. And this is unlike any other kind of inflatable board in the market for foiling. This is our patented design. So when you're in the air, you're actually feeling like you're on a composite board because this whole plate is rigid. So when you're winging and you're in straps, all you feel when you're up in the air is that you're riding a hard plate. But then when you kind of, before you're taking off and you come down, you have the buoyancy, obviously, of the inflatable construction. So this is a blend of composite technology with inflatable design. So
now,
here you have
how does this base plate
So yeah, this
together?
is to obviously fill the gap so you don't have drag from when the foil connects. We have an EVA plug here, which you can just kind of fit over the foil.
That was my question.
That just fits in there so that you have that kind of smooth release and you don't have that drag. So
connect your foil to it, then
connect
add
your
the plug
foil, then
in
put
second.
that on top, and it's like a sleeve which kind of creates that smooth release.
Fascinating. Okay.
And this is again also in the Deluxe Light construction. So we have that, and then we have so you have your kind of your airfoil, which is more like your kind of wingboard and composite boards. We then have, in line with the composite range, the above inflatable. So again, when we were talking earlier about longer, more narrow, mid-length style boards, we have that now in the inflatables. So here, again, these boards are fairly straight through the middle, so that parallel outline, which gives you the kind of nice tracking and predictability, and it's efficient to kind of get that speed. But you have a nice narrow pinch tail, which helps, again, sink and lift the nose up onto kind of releasing. And one of the key features this year, which we've brought in from, again, learning from the composite boards, is we've actually created a V in the design of the board. So here, maybe you can see, you've got this large V in the nose, which, again, when you're taking off, as you're starting to get speed, you're using the centerline rocker, but the rails lift, so you're reducing the drag, which means it's going to take off that much faster. But the main benefit that we feel when you on touchdowns, again, when you're coming down, this V helps disperse the water, and it means that you almost bounce off the water, and it's really forgiving. If it's flat, you're much more sticky, so you lose that speed, and it's harder to recover. So the V here really helps kind of that speed taking off, and when you're coming down, it helps you kind of recover, and it's more forgiving.
Because that was the one main drawback before, right?
Yeah,
of
exactly.
Inflatables was
they would feel
touchdowns.
quite sticky.
Yeah.
And we've really done that by creating this V. And basically, we cut the yarns through this center line, which then forces the board to kind of detach, and that's what creates that V. So, and then we obviously have an extra PVC stringer on the deck to close it once we've cut it. So the above board is, if I was to go I wanted to go on a holiday, I didn't want to have to take and check in a bag. All of the kind of inflatable foil boards are really aimed at that kind of travel ease. So being able to check in a bag that you can put your foil, you can put your wing in one bag, you can check it in without any extra baggage fees, and not kind of be having to hire a car to put roof racks on. And the compact, it's easy to store, easy to travel with, it's forgiving, you can drop it and it's not going to break, it's much more durable. So it really is, if I was to go on a trip, that's what I would kind of choose.
Or if you live in the city and you have
you live in a city, you don't have much space, these boards pack up and
Oh, awesome.
So it's you have obviously the foot strap mounts you can take on and out. The other thing with all of our foil boards in the inflatable range is that we were the first brand to really introduce welding technology. So instead of gluing all the pieces of PVC together, we weld the inner seams, which means that you're creating a mechanical bond, which means they don't leak. So naturally, when you have glue in different temperatures will always start to fail at some point. So by heat welding them together, you're basically creating a mechanical bond, so it's one shell, so the air cannot leak. And that's what really extends the lifetime of our boards. Then moving to kind of the last one in the inflatable range. Okay, so the last one in the inflatable range, which is again kind of a new design this year, is following now the Downwind design. So again, like in the composite range, we have the ACE foil. We now have the ACE airfoil, and so this brings in the same outline shape as our hardboard. So here you've got that really nice pin-shaped narrow tail, which helps you pop up into the foil. And when you're paddling these boards, as the tail sinks, it wants to release and come up off the water. And then you've got the narrower nose, so that again, when you're in the air, it feels faster because you're pushing less kind of drag through the air, and also taking off is that much kind of faster. So these boards are great as a kind of light wind wingboard, but also SUP foil board. You can paddle these up if you're going into some downwind conditions, or even in kind of waves, these you can use. And some of the features here, again, we've got the same top plate system, so you have that rigid connection when you're standing on the boards, you have that rigid feel. But what we wanted to do, because these are more narrow in the tail and the nose, are a bit more unstable, we wanted to have kind of the comfort of a wider board. And so what we've done is we've used, again, from our inflatable race boards, SUP, we've used our EVA trays, which means that you're actually creating a wider standing area on the deck. So you have more space to put your feet kind of flat on the deck, instead of kind of putting your foot on a rounded rail. So here you're widening the area that you can stand for more stability, but you're not creating more drag because you're not touching the bottom. So this is a way that we were able to increase stability without decreasing the overall kind of efficiency. So this is on the ACE foil boards, just because that outline is more narrow and a little bit less stable. But the same thing here, you've got the same V-shaped bottom in the nose, which again makes it easier to take off, faster, more forgiving on touchdowns. Yep. So yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of the inflatable range. Again, we have the airfoil, we have the Wingboard Learner, the above inflatable, and the ACE airfoil. So again, as a performance brand, we take the learnings from our composite boards, and then we try and bring those learnings and make it accessible for those that want to travel and have that storage benefit. So across the range, you'll see we have the above composite, with above inflatable, the ACE foil composite, the ACE inflatable. So really trying to kind of make that accessible to everyone. So a lot of boards, all with their own kind of purpose and niche. And again, as a performance brand, we want to really have each division the best offering in kind of performance on the water, but also having accessibility for those that really want to get into the sport.
That makes complete sense. Well, hey, man, thanks for taking the time.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing. All right, everybody. We'll see you at the next one.